Any unusual reactions or witty banter from people? Well, funny story, back in January when I went to Ipswich, and I was just there by chance at the last minute, somebody came and sat next to me, climbed over me, noticed my feet, and asked if I get called Frodo a lot, and we got chatting, and I explained that I'm barefoot pretty much all the time, and he asked what I did for a job, and I told him I was a musician, and now I'm teaching his son the sax, and we go to away games together, so that worked out rather well. And yeah, I don't mind being called Frodo or being called a hobbit. It happens quite a lot. I quite like it. And it's good to have a label that people get and recognise and like, because everyone likes hobbits. What's not to like about them? So I'm quite happy with that. I had someone sing the Flintstones theme at me once as well. That was quite amusing. He just went, "Oi, Fred, Fred," and they looked at his mate, and then they started singing the Flintstones tune together. They were both pissed off their faces at the time. It was absolutely hilarious.
I know somebody stopped me and said, "Nice kicks." I recently was in a 5K race, and somebody said I was pretty hardcore, and so that was pretty funny. Older woman was walking down my street, and she said, "Oh, you poor girl," and I was like, "Oh, don't worry, it's not that bad." And then she was like, "Oh, well, I remember my childhood as being barefoot as well," and so it was a pretty nice. She wasn't particularly witty, but it was a fun little conversation I had.
The ones that tend to make me giggle are the duh moments where somebody will say something like, "Oh, you have no shoes on," and I just want to say, wow, I thank you for pointing that out. I just noticed. How did I not know that before? It's silly, you know. It's one of those things that people are so shocked by it that I think they really can't grasp how this could possibly be, and they have no other explanation, so they sort of gravitate towards the first question or the first comment that comes to their mind, and it's not thought out. So I don't want to make fun of people who do that, but at the same time, it is a really silly thing to say. But yeah, most of the comments I get are pretty supportive. They will say a lot about, "Wow, you must be brave, you must be tough." It's like, no, it's really not that big of a deal. I don't understand when people think that going barefoot is somehow like this amazing feat. It's not. It really is just as simple as taking your shoes off. There is some conditioning that's involved there to make sure that you can do it. But beyond that, it's not an extreme thing to do.
Nothing specific comes to mind of individual reactions, but what I do notice is there's a big difference in the way that people react, whether I'm completely barefoot versus whether I have something decorative or camouflage oriented on my feet. I have a variety of barefoot sandals and bare-bottom shoes to decorate the top of the foot that don't actually have a sole on the bottom. If you have something on your foot that's in the place of a shoe, people react differently than they do if you're completely barefoot, at least to a degree. I get more negative questioning or concerned reactions from people when I'm completely barefoot. I get some curious, intrigued, questioning, some positive, supportive comments, but it's a mix. If I have something decorative on my feet, it's more of a conversation starter because someone can compliment that in a more neutral way to start a conversation. So it can be kind of nice for talking to people. It also somehow, just having something on your foot fills this placeholder in people's minds of the idea of a shoe. And so they don't think of you the same way that they do someone completely barefoot. It's kind of bizarre because you're effectively doing the same exact thing. The difference between going barefoot and wearing shoes is really very mental in a lot of ways, and both for the person doing it and for the people who are observing and interacting with it. If you at least put something, decorative, whether it's jewelry or if you have something that looks like a shoe but it isn't, you're less likely to be thought of as either insane or just slovenly and uncouth and hippie and can't afford shoes and whatever else that people might think about somebody who is not wearing shoes at all in our so predominantly shod society.
I was going on a barefoot hike with another barefooter, Jennifer, and we were going up this, it's not really a mountain, but they call it Cougar Mountain. As we were coming down, somebody was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that. You're so brave." And I'm like thinking, you're the brave one, because if I slip, guess what? I'm very confident in my feet and my legs to handle that because I can feel the ground beneath me. I'm not going to twist an ankle thoughtlessly the way that I would, in my mind, if I was wearing a pair of hiking boots. I consider myself not the brave one. I consider people who go up a slope like that, hiking with boots on, the brave ones, because I don't know how they can stand that, not being able to feel the ground beneath their feet.
I want to address the Vibrams 5 fingers thing question. I have had several students wear those, and quite honestly, they don't find them terribly helpful. In fact, some of them have reported additional foot problems when they wear them. And frankly, those students who don't keep them regularly clean or washed out, they get rather kind of gross and untidy here. So I'm not really a fan of the Vibrams, but for the people who wear them and like them, I guess it's their prerogative.
I have a pair of Vibrams. I biked over here, so I wore them here. They're my biking shoes now because otherwise they give me blisters. So they're not really my favorite choice of minimalist footwear, but I do wear them every once in a while. I think the headlines blow it up a bit, so I don't think what they are saying is necessarily false, but I don't think they have the sources to back up fully what they say as well, so hard to say. I think it might give a bit of negative press to barefooting and minimalist shoes in general, so I'm not sure that it's necessarily a good thing to have happened.
What do I think of Vibrams? Well, I'm really not surprised. Well, I kind of am. I'm kind of surprised that they'd get in trouble for it, but I'm not at all puzzled by the decision or the logic of it. They've tried to make money out of going barefoot by selling you a product that they say you ought to buy in order to be barefoot, which is ridiculous. If they just market their shoes as an alternative option, different kind of shoe, then nothing wrong with that. You know, their shoes have their problems, and Vibram 5 fingers have the same kind of problems as well. Plus, I think it's a bit dodgy not being able to wear socks with them because you're just going to sweat into them and get really hot, and all those bacteria that I've talked about before love that kind of thing when they've got access to your feet every time you wear them. Yeah, not a great way to keep fungal infections and viruses out of your feet wearing those things, but that's a shoe problem, and if you're going to wear shoes, I suppose you have to accept that. But if you want to go barefoot, just do it. And if you're afraid to do it, then wearing shoes doesn't mean you get to go barefoot without fear. It just means that you aren't barefoot, and that's all there is to it. So shame on Vibrams for trying to take money out of people for the privilege of going barefoot when they're not even getting to do what they think they're doing.
I might be biased because of my personal experiences. The things I've seen with people who've sold the Vibrams in stores is people have come in and said, I want to run barefoot. And immediately people get pointed to the Vibrams. And it's like, well, that's not running barefoot. It's close, and obviously the biomechanics are mostly there, but it's definitely not the same.
I agree with the idea that their health benefits of their shoes do not match going barefoot, though I think it's kind of absurd that they get singled out when all the other shoe companies with the much more obtrusive and constricting and thicker padded cushion shoes make all kinds of health claims that they don't get called out about. But the difference that a lot of people don't realize is it's not just the ability of the feet to physically move in the same ways, it's also the sensory information from the bottoms of the feet. Your feet are almost as sensitive as your hands are in terms of detailed sensory information that they would capture from your environment if you actually expose them to it. And that information is used to tell the rest of your body how to move. If your feet are experiencing discomfort, they send signals to your hip muscles to say, hey, you need to activate some more and take care of us, set us down gently, move in different ways to make it more comfortable for the feet. That's part of your built-in calibration system of how to move. And so Vibram soles, even though they're only a couple millimeters of rubber, still take that away to a very considerable degree. I gave a shot to see how it was like wearing Vibrams as my main outdoor shoe for a few months. And when I went completely barefoot, it was like night and day. The difference really is pretty dramatic. So I've also written a blog article talking in a lot of detail about all these aspects. So you can check out my blog to get even more information on that at humanbodyusermanual.com.
I wanted to show you my stage. The stage is getting rather rough, and quite honestly, because of this area right in here, which is really, really rough, I'm going to probably have to cut back on barefoot dance rehearsals, unfortunately. So it is what it is, because I have to put the health and safety concerns of my students ahead of my lifestyle encouragement. Ames is home to Iowa State University, where a lot of people attend to study agriculture, engineering, math, science, and among the more popular sciences are environmental studies. And this park, which used to be a quarry at one time, was transformed into this beautiful lake and park as a tribute to environmentalism, and so I thought it's a very appropriate place to do a lot of barefoot walking. I'll even come out here and attempt barefoot walking in the fall and winter when there's no snow.
I feel inspired when I see very tiny people who are just learning to walk. It's amazing how they've never used their feet for walking before, and then they do it without need of shoes. It's interesting how kids of all ages, for some reason, seem more likely to enjoy going barefoot than most adults. I don't really see any reason why we should lose this ability.
My one biggest inspiration inspired me long before he had anything to do with going barefoot, and that was Eddie Izzard. And I first got to know him as a comedian who wore dresses and makeup on stage, and he was very proud, or certainly not ashamed, of being a transvestite, and that was an inspiration to me. I'm not the sort of person who would ever wear a dress. That said, there was a time when I didn't think I'd ever wear nail varnish, and I'm actually going to like that now. But his routine on Bloke in a Dress, which was from his show called Unrepeatable in the 90s, was a real inspiration to me, because hearing him talk about how he dealt with that kind of heckle when he was out and about living his daily life said to me, well, if he can do that in a dress, I should be able to handle, hey, you've got no shoes on, much more easily. And I do. Since then, he's gone on to actually start running around barefoot. He was doing ridiculous, physically demanding runs for charity, and just started off running with shoes on in the UK, and then that led into training barefoot for a long run barefoot across Africa. I don't know how that ended up, whether he actually completed the run. It was a few years ago now, and I didn't track it to its conclusion, but I do remember him training without any shoes on, running around London and getting some funny looks and comments, and becoming an ambassador for barefoot running. So he's gone on from being a big inspiration to me to almost being one of us, at least as far as running goes.
My first introduction to the idea of how important going barefoot is was through the book Born to Run, which I heard of from clients and runners, and I did come across Ken Bob Saxton as a main figure in that book. He was one of the first barefooters that I actually wrote to, and he came out for the Boston Barefoot Running Festival last September, so he was definitely one of my first inspirations. But since then, the online communities that exist for barefooters, I don't know that many people in person in the area yet. I hope to know more. But the people who participate in online communities, I'm not even going to begin to try to name any names, because there's so many people out there who are, going barefoot and sharing their stories, and giving encouragement and inspiration online, that it's those communities, I think, that I would go to the most. The Society for Barefoot Living, barefooters.org, the Facebook groups, the Yahoo group, all those communities. That's where I get my inspiration from, and every single person who posts on there about their experiences is part of my inspiration for going for it myself and reaching out and trying to make this a more barefoot friendly society.
I don't think I have a single person that's my inspiration for barefooting in general, but I think that everybody on the Barefoot Living Facebook page is a great inspiration, and hearing all the stories and how you get over problems has been really helpful. So have a good one, you guys.